Hey, what is going on? It is 12 noon on Friday, which means it is time for State of Real Estate. My name is John Christman. This show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. And what we're here to talk about today is topics. This is what we do every Friday. We talk about topics to mastermind and grow your real estate business, to expand, to be expansive and constantly grow what it is that you're doing. Because if you're not constantly expanding and growing what it is that you're doing, your business will begin to contract. Even if it's not contracting now, it will. Or if you're just getting started and you really want to explode your business, advertising is a great way to do that. But what's really important with advertising is making sure that you go into this understanding the budget, because chances are high that you can't afford to advertise yet unless you've set aside a pretty significant amount of money to be able to have the longevity that advertising requires. Longevity, persistence, patience, these are key words when it comes to advertising, and it's going to be a big underlying factor as we break down. Really, starting out, like if you're brand new to advertising, laying out a budget, that's what we're going to do. We'll talk about different types of strategies, different platforms that are popular right now in 2020 for advertising. That may change if you're watching this video in the future, but you could just rinse and replace with whatever the current popular advertising platforms are of the day based on what matches up with these same strategies we're going to be talking about. So get yourself ready, get yourself a notebook, because we're going to be going deep. We're going to be getting technical today and covering setting up a budget for your first advertising campaign.
You are watching
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Christman. This show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every single Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time, to help you guys mastermind to grow your real estate business, to help you become more successful. And what we're talking about today is the cost to advertise. Really, we're going to be dealing a lot of budgeting type of stuff. So, your first ad campaign. How do you start your first ad campaign? Now, if you haven't watched any of the videos that we've done on farming and advertising, just search on our YouTube or on our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success. Check out all of our videos on farming and advertising, and really any of them we have on marketing as well, because that'll all tie into this. But I don't think we've really ever done a video so far just really on the budgeting aspect of this. And this is really so essential, because this portion right here is what, so imagine you're going on a road trip. If you're going on a road trip and you're going to travel more miles than you have gas in your tank, you're going to need to stop for fuel in order to get to your destination. So you have your start, your finish, your destination, and you're trying to get to this destination, but let's say at this point, this is where you get to 300 miles. And at 300 miles, that's all the gas you have in your tank. You have no gas left, so you can't get any further. You're not going to get to your destination unless you stop for gas. Get more gas so that way you can continue towards your destination. This is the same thing you have to keep in mind with any advertising strategy. And this is, like I said, the biggest, most important takeaway I want you guys to have from this episode. That's why I want to hit you with it right from the beginning here. If you don't properly budget for what it's going to take to get to that destination, to that finish, if you don't budget for the right amount of gas, look, if you don't have money to get enough gas to get to your destination, you shouldn't go on this road trip, because you're not going to make it to your destination. That's the same thing with advertising. If you're going to run out of money here before you get to your destination, you might as well not waste this money. Save up the money until you get the proper funding to start an ad campaign that could be persistent. So when you're dealing with leads, different leads will have different quality. Now, what do people mean when they say quality of leads? I mean, I could sit here and argue that all leads are a quality lead because all leads are going to result in business someday, sometime in the future. But the reason why people will call a lead a low quality lead is because of timing. Because a lower quality lead, as they might be viewed, is going to be a lead that might be, we'll put low and high quality. A low quality lead, they might be 24 plus months out from transacting with you. Whether they're a buyer or a seller, they're very early on. And the high quality leads, that's your 3-month people. The 3-month and sooner. What do we do? The less than sign. Yeah, less than. Okay, yeah, sure. Don't have to be a genius to do real estate. You don't have to understand equal than or less than signs. But look, point being here, the higher quality leads, these are more urgent leads. So it's really not necessarily about the quality, it's about the urgency. Because these are all quality leads. As long as the information is accurate, as long as they gave you a good phone number, a good email address, their real name, that is a quality lead. It just might not be an urgent lead. So one of the things that's going to be really important for this is making sure that you already have it structured out and set up so that you could appropriately categorize and follow up with these. That's if you've watched our episodes of State of Real Estate before, this is where you use like some sort of database, a CRM, a contact relationship management system to be able to keep track of all this. Because if this is your CRM, you're not going to be able to grow a very large business because there's only so much information this device we've got in our head could keep in mind at any point in time. Whereas the technology that exists out there, we can have tens of thousands of contacts in there with notes about them, with little hashtags to categorize them. You could put them on different lists for emails or text messages or newsletters or whatever it is that you're doing. If you've done previous business with them, you can keep track of them. So before you even start advertising, you already want to have some system in place that's going to be able to handle this higher volume of clients. Now, your sphere of influence, you might be able to keep that information up here because these are your friends, your family members, and there's already friends and family members. They're already in your brain already, so you're just adding information to the story. But when you start working with complete strangers, which are going to be people outside of your sphere of influence, that's where you're going to need something, an artificial brain almost, to keep track of that. And that's what your database is meant to be. So make sure you have a database set up. That's going to cost you some money typically. Maybe you could use like a Google spreadsheet if you're trying to do this for free. You could use googlesheets.com or whatever the website is for Google Sheets for free to be able to just make a little spreadsheet. But that's not a long-term solution because spreadsheets get bogged down and they're bulky and they're not designed to work that way. But it's a good place to start. So if that's something you understand how to use a spreadsheet, you don't need to go buy some fancy software. Just at least have some way like that to keep track of it. Hey, you can even do this on pen and paper if you're really going to be old school about it. That works as well. But just keep in mind that that's not scalable. But it's a fine way to start out with. But you want to have some system in place before you start advertising because you will have this variety of leads. Now, where you advertise in is going to dictate where the leads may be on this spectrum. Now, what are the lowest quality leads? What are the people that are going to be the furthest out? Well, that's going to be, and I want to quit using, I'm going to erase this word quality up here because I don't want to perpetuate the idea that just because a lead isn't urgent, it isn't a quality lead. As long as the information is accurate. Now, if somebody gives you a fake phone number, that's not a quality lead. If somebody doesn't give you their phone number, that's not a quality lead. If somebody, again, gives you any sort of inaccurate or they're trying to withhold information, that is not a quality lead. But just because a lead has a low urgency, meaning they're not ready yet, that doesn't make them bad quality. It just makes them not ready yet. So there's a different way you go about nurturing a lower urgency lead. And this is going to be where, this is where you're really kind of painting in broad strokes or you're getting these lower frequency, these lower urgency types of leads. This could be where you're farming a particular neighborhood. If you're trying to advertise to a particular neighborhood where you're advertising basically to all the homeowners, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people in there that are going to be probably 2+ years out for using your services, but you're basically still dripping information to them, but through more automated means. And your higher urgency leads, these are the ones that you're more actively involved in because they're closer to actually doing business. And that's this spectrum that you have here between people that are basically not ready at all to people that are ready right now, and the people that are kind of in between, the ones that are maybe 6 months out, a year out. However it is that you go about categorizing this, you want to have something like that. Now, the reason why, because I want to get back on the budgeting subject up here. The reason why I want to bring this up is because on this low end, you might be dealing with 24 months. We're going to put that as the furthest out this may be. We'll have over here 0 months, basically right now, to 24 months. Now, how do you budget to be able to reach certain people in different parts of this spectrum? So if you're brand new and you don't have any leads yet, you don't have much of a database, you're pretty much going to be casting the net out in a lot of ways to people that might be anyway in here, especially if you're just doing more generic methods where you're targeting a particular neighborhood, where you're not necessarily trying to profile somebody that is ready to buy right now. Now, on this end of the spectrum here, you might have something like Zillow Ads. Let's talk about Zillow. They're the gorilla in the room for advertising. Now, when you're on Zillow, you're more likely to have a lead probably more in this range here. They might still be somewhere farther out here, but especially when they're requesting information for a particular property, they're going to maybe be a little bit sooner on the spectrum. That depends. Zillow leads may be slightly different in your market, but they tend to be something a little bit faster, and that's also why these are higher cost, especially if you're paying for, and it's not just Zillow.com, it could be Realtor.com, could be Homes.com, could be Trulia, could be any of these websites out there that sell real estate leads, but Zillow being the number one search result, typically, usually the biggest one. But a lot of these have concierge services where they're helping you qualify these leads, and they're only passing through the highest priority leads. Now, again, these are going to be your most expensive leads. Why are they the most expensive? Well, because they're doing the most for you. These are resale leads, first of all. You're not paying an advertiser like Google or Facebook. You're paying a company that is also paying an advertiser like Google or Facebook. So they almost become kind of a middleman between Facebook, Google, these big directors of traffic, and Zillow, the repository of all these property listings. And then you pay to advertise on these certain listings on there. And you might also, again, pay for their concierge or whatever it is they might be calling it, program where they might be calling people and qualifying them and only passing through the best quality leads to you, or whatever, however it is that their system works. But they have a lot of things they may be doing to try to get you more current business right now. Now, as we get over here to the leads that are farther out, and now this ultimately can be better quality if you spend the right amount of time on them. You might be looking at anywhere from, on these websites, $50 to $100 per lead, whereas the people that are going to probably be more in this range here, maybe 1 year to 24 months, maybe even a little sooner than that, maybe, like 9 months out or something along those lines. Another way over here you could also, that's actually a lot cheaper than $50 to $100 per lead, but you're also probably going to get more people in this closer range right here, is advertising on Google. And we're going to get into the budgeting part. I just want to go over a lot of the different options that are out there to advertise. Google or any sort of PPC or pay-per-click advertising, that's also going to trigger people more over here on this side of the spectrum, because this is usually where people are searching for something more specific. They may be searching for a particular address or a particular neighborhood or something along those lines. So you could pay Google to be at the top of the search results list, or somehow be higher up in the search results list than you show up normally. So this pay-per-click advertising, this usually does have higher lead cost, but and this does depend on your market. Google Ads can be expensive as well, but you might be paying, maybe somewhere along the lines of, maybe on the low end, like $15 to maybe $30 per lead. Just to give you ranges, because again, depending on your market and how competitive it is, this is an auction style format. So in your market, depending on how much competition is out there, how many other people are also trying to advertise on those same keywords, that's where it's going to be more expensive. And when there's not competition, that's going to be where it's less expensive. You might be able to get it cheaper than this, even. But pay-per-click, it's usually going to be a little bit of a premium compared to, we'll talk about the big also elephant in the room for advertising. The other one we don't have up here, Facebook, which also encompasses Instagram. Which this also, TikTok advertising isn't really too popular right now. It's something that's growing. If that's continued to operate in the United States and they continue on that trajectory they've been on, then that's going to be a major platform that you'll want to be able to take advantage of if you're not taking advantage of it already. But this also falls into like the YouTube ads that you're seeing at the beginning of videos, or anything where people aren't searching for what you're advertising, you're just displaying it to them. That's what we call display advertising. Display advertising, that's like your Facebook, the Instagram ads, TikTok ads, YouTube ads. It's a commercial that you see on TV. When you're watching your favorite sitcom on TV and a commercial comes on, that's display advertising. You didn't ask for it. You just get it. That's what display advertising is, as opposed to pay-per-click or these websites like Zillow where you're actively seeking out the information. It's not like you turn on the TV and you're looking for a certain commercial. You're watching the show and you're just shown the commercial because that helps pay for whatever it is that you're viewing. That's how display advertising works. But now, since with display advertising, people are not actively seeking out what you're showing them, it's not as high quality typically. Not as high quality because people, again, aren't necessarily, you're interrupting them. You're interrupting whatever it is that they're doing with an ad, which can still be an effective ad, but not as effective as these methods over here. So typically on display, you might be picking up on people that are maybe interested, but farther out. So this, again, falls farther end on the spectrum, but it's also going to be cheaper. You might be able to get leads for as low as maybe $1 and maybe up to like $10. But I would absolutely keep your display budget low. Now, in addition to this, in addition to advertising digitally, actually one more thing about the digital and one thing you want to advertise, and this is another format of display advertising, but it's called retargeting. And retargeting advertising takes people that have been on your website and brings them back on your website. It shows them display ads through Facebook, through YouTube, through Instagram, through TikTok, through whatever the platform may be. You're showing them display ads to remind them that your website exists and to get them back on your website. So you pay to advertise to the people that have already been on your website, and there's something called a pixel that allows you to track that from your website, or not necessarily you track that, allows the advertisers to track that, which they'll share some of that data with you about about the people visiting your website. But you use these tracking pixels to be able to identify the people that go on your website, so that way these advertising platforms can reserve ads to that same individual. And that way they get them back on the website, because remember, repetition is the name of the game. You don't send out one advertisement 2 years ago and then 2 years later they just magically remember that letter you sent them from 2 years ago. You have to constantly advertise to them. One other thing I would also throw in here with this, and before we even get into that, because direct mail is what I also want to bring into this strategy here, because there's a lot of digital stuff that's up here. But again, we want to go full circle. We want to try to do as much advertising as possible, and this is very complicated. Direct mail is a lot simpler and straightforward, so that might be a better way to get started with advertising, but you do want to start to draw in and bring in these digital elements, because these ultimately can be a lot more effective than just sending letters out to people. The letters can be very effective as well. It's just this has the potential to have an even lower cost potentially and have a broader reach if you know how to use this. The complexity, the learning curve is just what stands in the way of being able to dial in lower ad cost here. And again, these are all just generic numbers. But retargeting ads, this is the cheapest, because these are people that have already interacted with your website. If you're just displaying to random people, they've never heard of your company before, your brand, your image, your name, they might not click on that ad. But when they see an ad for the website they were on the other day, and they're like, oh, that's right, that was the website I saw that one house on, or they see another picture of the house they looked at on your website. There's so many ways to really get creative with the retargeting stuff that could really get advanced on this here. But this is where you get even cheaper. I mean, you might be dealing with pennies to get a lead, up to maybe $2 or $3, maybe $5, we'll say, on the high end of this here. But this is all part of a balanced ad strategy, at least a balanced online ad strategy, because what we've also got to cover here is the mail, the direct mail. And I would make this part of your strategy, even in 2020 or 2021, until they close the post office down, which, let's be honest, they'll probably never do that. The post office will probably always be around. So as long as that post office is around and it's still really cheap to be able to reach your people through their mailbox, yeah, they throw out a lot of junk mail, but what the mailbox has that is so far superior to anything that's online is tangibility, something people could touch and feel. Something physical, something real. You know, when you see all the stuff that you see on these devices here, it's easy to almost have a separation between reality and what actually you see on this device that you see on this screen. So for that reason is why I'm still a big fan of mail, because it gives you something physical that, let's be honest, they're probably just going to throw out, but it helps reinforce everything else it is that you're doing. And it, again, really kind of adds that whole real thing. You know, authenticity and being real, that's something that is really have risen in importance in the last decade. You know, people didn't always question the authenticity. Well, you know, people have always questioned authenticities of things, but I feel like in 2020, people are doing it more. Maybe they got lazy on checking into authenticity, or they didn't have the tools or the technology to be able to verify authenticity. But now the internet does. So people are always trying to figure out, is this genuine? Is this a scam? That's what people are concerned with. They don't want to get burned by a bad deal by a con artist from the internet. And we've all heard stories of con artists from the internet. And so the internet, no matter how good your internet content is, that always has that little bit of stigma, maybe in the back of their head, that, oh, this is just some internet guy or some internet girl that just wants to take my money. Because maybe they had a bad experience with some internet person before, some internet advertisement before. We probably all have had bad experience with some sort of previous advertisement before. So the mail, it just makes it real. It just adds another element that they might not be seeing any of this, but maybe they're seeing that mail. So when you're targeting a particular physical area, and you should still, even as you try to dial in the type of person it is that you're talking to, you should still also try to dial in the particular area you're advertising to, because the more it is you could focus your efforts, the more it is that you're able to really maximize your exposure. And the more you maximize your exposure, the faster you get business, because that helps reduce the possibility of somebody slipping through the cracks. Because if you're advertising to a particular area, particular audience, and you don't advertise to them enough, some of them slip through the cracks. You're always going to have people slipping through the cracks, going with one of your competitors. But the more it is that you gain market share and dominate the advertising in that particular audience, the less likely somebody's going to slip through the cracks. And especially when you're starting out advertising, that's really important. And that's why this omnipresent strategy that I'm talking about here is what I would recommend. Now, for mail, I mean, for your cost on this per lead, it depends. But I mean, you might be, let's imagine that you send out 100 letters. Let's say you send out 100 letters, and sending out 100 letters would, at regular postage rates, cost you about $50 for the postage, maybe another $50 for your stamps, for the printing and everything. So maybe about $1 each, maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe 60 cents, 70 cents. We'll just call it $1, make it easy. So if you advertise to 100 homes, that's $100. Now, do you think out of one letter, sending one letter to 100 homes, are you going to get a lead? Maybe not. Now, if you're doing all these other things, the mail is a great supporting factor to this as well. And if you take advantage of bulk rate postage that's available, instead of paying 50 cents, you might be paying 27 cents or 15 cents to send out your mail. So you've got to make sure you take advantage of those savings, because especially when you multiply across multiple numbers, that becomes really important. Because if it's only costing you 15 cents, instead of sending out 100, you might be able to send out 600 or 700. And now you have a lot higher likelihood that you're going to get a lead out of that. But even then, you're still spending maybe about $100. So for the mail, you might be spending $50 to $100 per lead, maybe even more than that. I would put that on par with this here. I would even say that this could be a little bit cheaper. And even that per $100, this can maybe be as much as $300. I have seen that before. That's a little bit more extreme. Any one of these here, these ranges can be larger, could be lower, depending on your particular market and how much competition that's there, because most advertising costs are based on an auction type of model. The more demand they have, the higher the prices go. No one knows exactly what the price is of advertising. That's why you're watching this show today, because you're like, well, how much does it cost? Because they don't just slap a price on a Google ad and say, hey, you could be here for X amount of dollars. It's a really complicated auction-based system for determining the pricing for all of these here, and that allows them to basically in the blink of an eye raise or lower the prices to be able to maximize their profit. So great system for them. You just have to be aware of that and understand how this can be fluid. Even though you might be experiencing $15 per lead one month, that could be rising as maybe another competitor comes along and starts advertising on the same keywords as you. Or somebody is targeting somebody that's going on your website is also going on one of your competitors' websites, and you're both doing retargeting and you're trying to outbid each other to advertise to them. That's going to drive up your advertising cost. But starting to put this whole picture together, you're able to piece together these individual pieces. You might not want to do Zillow or Realtor.com or maybe even doing direct mail because maybe of the cost of how much it's going to cost you to get a lead off of one of these platforms. You might be more opted into doing Facebook advertising, but remember, this lower cost of lead here, while it is a lower cost, you're much more likely to get people that are farther out. Now, you can still get people that are more ready now with this cheaper display advertising, but again, I would build this into a balanced portfolio if you can. So that way you could understand and realize in your particular market which might work the best. Even though this might be more expensive than this, you might get a lot more urgent leads from this. Or maybe you're not getting quality information here, whereas this you do get quality information. It depends. That's why you want to test this and figure it out. But what I would budget for is try to figure out how much this is going to cost you for 12 months and how much this is going to cost you for 24 months to maintain that level of advertising that you're doing, and not really just maintain it, but ultimately grow it. But start off with just how much can I afford to spend for 12 months? And that's what I would use to start out your initial starting budget. That you're committing to spending this amount of money across 12 months, that you've got the money, or you're going to be able to have the money to be able to spend this for 12 months. And really you want to plan that out for 24 months. Now, hopefully within that 12-month timeline, you'll have at least one sale that goes through so you could reinvest some of that money and ultimately grow this. But this is what I would plan for. Plan for 12 to 24 months without having sales. Because if you could do that, then you could be persistent with your advertising. And your advertising will be there for when people are ready to make a purchase. Because even though they're maybe 2 years out, that doesn't mean that they're a bad lead. It just means they're not ready. It just means that you've got to make sure that you stay top of mind with them. And there's a bunch of free things you could do on top of this. Once you have a phone number, calling, having personal conversations, sending text messages, sending emails, there's a lot of things you could do on top of the advertising once you do have their contact information. But until you get their contact information, that's where you could use the retargeting advertising to keep bringing them back on your website, keep getting them reinterested in the properties you're showing them and the services you're offering or whatever it is that you're advertising to them. And eventually, once that timing becomes more soon, that's where where they'll exchange their contact info with you. For maybe it's because they want to learn more about something, maybe it's because they have questions, whatever it may be, but that comes from building a relationship, and you could use this advertising to build a relationship, especially the retargeting advertising. That's very important to be able to build a stronger relationship with your customers and your brand, so that way they know what you stand for, what you do, how you could help them, and whether or not they trust you. People look to advertising and marketing to determine whether or not they could trust a company. Advertising and marketing is literally almost like PR of what information you're disseminating out into the world about your organization. And this is your opportunity to showcase what your business is about, what your business does, how your business can help people it is that you've helped in the past. And you want to do that in the best way possible, because that's your opportunity to build a great relationship, which will make your transaction go so much smoother than if that relationship doesn't exist. So look, let's go ahead and put a pin in this right here, because I don't want to get too all over the place here. I want you guys to focus on the budgeting aspect of this. Think about the numbers. Think of how much you could spend over a year, over 2 years, and commit to some level of spending. You're probably going to have to spend at least $100 a month to have an advertising campaign that's going to at least produce minimal results, if not $250, $500, maybe $1,000, maybe even $10,000 when you're really trying to pump in as many leads as possible. And it's easy to view this as an expense, as we would in our personal life, where we view expenses as money that we spend that we don't get any financial return on investment on. You go on a vacation, you take some sort of trip, you buy groceries, you're not getting financial returns from these items, so it's easy to focus on cutting cost and cutting expenses, whereas when you're advertising, this is making an investment. So it's about managing that return on investment and maximizing that. So if you want to get your real estate license, you got to take post licensing, whatever the case may be, call us 813-333-2676. That's 813-333-2676. You can find out more information online as well at tampaschool.com. That's about all the time we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate.